Welcome to another edition of Weather and Climate Chat with Monsoon Mike Regensberger and Dr. Michael Davis. Dr. Davis, welcome back.
Thanks.
It's an interesting week. Temperatures just went nuts this week. Believe it or not, I don't think we broke any records. I saw some of 1974, I believe, had some days in the 80s. So if we did, I think we might have tied a record in Wilkes-Barre somewhere, and Allentown might have come close. Philly might have come close. But anyway, you cut it. Very unseasonably warm week. And even I, who was leaning toward the higher solution last week, didn't think we were going to see 76, 77, 78. What happened?
Well, what we saw was the ridge in the atmosphere pretty much take shape over our region.
Right.
If you were to go further out west, there was a huge trough out there, which produced some snowfall for the Rocky Mountains.
I was very jealous.
Colorado, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana got some snow as well. And then when that trough essentially was coming further south, you're essentially pushing air down across the western U.S., but as a reaction, the air is going to have to come up from the south on the eastern side, and that's exactly what we saw.
Right.
When that trough finally decided to kick out into the Great Plains on Wednesday, Thursday, something like that, we had a tornado outbreak around Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana. National Weather Service, Dallas just confirmed that there were a couple tornadoes around Dallas-Fort Worth area just yesterday. But the temperatures just kept going up and up. We had winds out of the south, which helped give us warm air from the south, along with sunny skies.
Yep.
And that's just the perfect recipe for heating.
Right.
That would then bring the temperatures up much higher than even I thought.
Right. Yeah, it was pretty wild, but nights still got nice and cool. So there was that big, what's that word? Diurnal?
Diurnal temperature range.
Yeah, there was that nice diurnal temperature range. We were waking up in my mountain town of Auburn, and it was still 45 degrees. And by afternoon, we were flirting with 80. So it was a nice wide spread throughout the day.
Mm-hmm. It certainly was.
Yeah.
And to go back to your record highs, I didn't see any record highs.
Yeah, it came close, but surprisingly, no record highs. I saw that 1974 year, before both of our times, looked pretty warm around here.
And there may even be a slight chance we break a record today.
I saw that, yeah.
The record high that I saw was for 77 in Reading, at least, in 1948.
Okay.
And 78, 1948 in Allentown. So
okay.
The local area, mid-70s, we might be pushing it. I'm seeing some models calling for 75, 76. So.
I think a lot of it just depends is if we can lose this cloud cover. Now, we're recording this show around 11:20, and this show is going to air at 1:30. Maybe by then we might see some sun trying to break through, but these clouds could be a little stubborn today, too.
Yes, it doesn't look like the cloud cover is going to break anytime soon. This is all moisture coming from the south. This trough that we're having in the atmosphere right now is the one that was over western U.S.
Right.
And that's just bringing that whole energy this way in the form of that cold front, which is, as we speak, 11:20 again on Friday.
Right.
Somewhere between Pittsburgh and Altoona.
Okay, so it's on the
westward.
way.
So we got another couple hours before it actually gets through here, and the rain starts.
Now, this show's going to air at 1:30, so that'll still be ahead of the actual front crossing our area, which is looking like, 7, 8 o'clock, somewhere around there this evening. Could we see any thunderstorms out of this? I saw a couple models wanted to give us some thunder, but that might be stretching it.
Yeah. The possibility does exist for some potential thunder. I wouldn't be surprised if we did.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is it's early November.
Right.
Chances are you're not going to get the uplift in the atmosphere that you typically would get in, say, July or August, which would fuel those storms. But with all the warm air, unseasonably warm air, I might add, that is in place, certainly not out of the realm of possibilities.
Right. Now, looking ahead to what we have for the weekend, finally beginning tomorrow, cold air vections working in. Looks like a fairly seasonal weekend. Highs upper 50s, low 60s, at or slightly above normal. Next week looks fairly average, maybe a little bit above average, nothing low like what we just experienced this week.
Yeah, the high pressure will be working in for the weekend and providing us with some sunny conditions, pleasant weather.
Yep.
But temperatures will be back to seasonably mid-50s or so.
I'm looking forward to it.
I like how you brought out the cold air advection term.
Well, sometimes, you have these fronts. Maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Sometimes you have these fronts that come through, and as soon as that front goes through, the temperature drops 20 degrees. Other times you have these fronts go through. It's like, is it through? It still feels pretty warm. And then a couple hours later, you start feeling the cool air filtering in. You want to describe what that is about?
Advection is simply the more scientific term for the horizontal movement of air. So instead of air moving up and down, like what you might think of in like a thunderstorm, you have air that's moving east-west, coming in at the surface, essentially. So in the case of a cold front, where you have colder air moving into warmer air, you're going to have the wind shift from a southerly direction ahead of the front, which is what's giving us the warm air. And behind the cold front, the winds are out of the north, so that wind shift is causing that colder air to come down from the north, advecting into the region. So that's where you get this cold air advection term. Meteorologists like to abbreviate it as CAA, C-A-A.
I've seen that,
and then WAA, W-A-A, for warm air advection. In my weather analysis class, when I go over this, I say it's like Fozzie Bear with waka, waka. Terrible joke, though.
One of the many joys of reading the National Weather Service forecast discussions, because you hear about the CFP, the cold front passage, and the CAA, and the
FROPAS,
the FROPA, the frontal passages, or I'm trying to think of some other good ones. I'm not thinking. Well, there's many.
Max for vorticity maximum.
So it's pretty fun. But okay, so we get that. We have a more seasonal weekend. Looks like that front kind of slows down not too far from our south. And then next week, I see potentially some instability, like around Tuesday, Wednesday. It looks like another situation, sort of like we had this past week, where we have a disturbance just to our south.
Yeah, the models seem to be hinting at Tuesday, maybe even a Monday night. And then by the middle of the week, like Wednesday, Thursday, could get another high pressure coming in to help keep things more pleasant and dry for the remainder of the work week.
I saw one, and I subscribe to a ton of weather pages on Facebook, and everybody is a weather expert on Facebook. And one guy was getting excited last night, and I just kind of laughed. But one guy was getting excited last night because the 18Z GFS, which is not necessarily the most reliable model out there, the 18Z, had rain changing to snow next week, somewhere around Thursday. I don't know if you saw that.
For those of you that don't know what 18Z refers to, it's just the time
that it comes out,
that the models are done at, because it's Zulu time or Z time, referring to more of a global time.
So I haven't looked to see if that flipped back this morning, but I wouldn't get too excited over what the 18Z GFS says about next Thursday.
Yes. In fact, the temperatures that I was seeing looked like they were going to be inching back into the 60s.
At or above normal, exactly. So that was probably some fluke model. But fluke run, I should say, because the model itself is okay.
And if you're the meteorologist, you don't want to camp on one model. It's very dangerous to do that. Because then you're not looking at other multiple models, and you can't get that full picture of what exactly the atmosphere is trying to do.
It's got to be a compilation of them all and using your knowledge as well. I saw another page, and this guy I won't mention any names, this guy tends to be rather conservative and very responsible with his forecasting, but he said a pretty bold statement the other day. He said that after this Friday, today, there will be no more 70-degree days for the rest of the year. And I'm not really quite so sure that I'm ready to say something so bold with the way this year is going. I could see another warm shot. What do you think?
Well, funny you should mention that, because in Wednesday's meteorology lab, I made a similar claim, saying that I think the 70s are done.
Oh, okay.
But we'll see. I mean, this month is certainly off to a very crazy start in terms of temperature, and the Climate Prediction Center still has us well above average for November. And that they even had extending it into the winter, so November, December, January, February, it all looks like we have a reasonable chance of being above average. But on the same side of the argument, we also seem to be getting a maybe slightly higher risk of precipitation for the winter. So perhaps that indicates that we're going to be getting more rain. I don't know.
A mild and wet winter,
kind
perhaps.
of a shot in the dark, I think, at this point about
Right.
whether we're going to have more rain or snow.
Right.
I will say with El Nino in place that we typically will be having a warmer northeast during a traditional El Nino event. But we also can get more waviness in the jet stream. So
Right.
we're going to get more cold shots of air, perhaps more frequently. So it'd be much more of an extreme winter, which
Yeah.
could lead to more storms, more snow, more rain, more snow, then more rain.
Right. So
It-
just
I
basically a
think we're-
roller coaster winter, perhaps.
Yeah, that's what it seems to be suggesting.
And I think it's also important to mention, I mean, meteorologists throw the term average out a lot. And we always say, you know, well above average. But temperatures that are well above average in, say, late November would be, you know, upper 50s, low 60s, whereas now that same temperature would be about average. So we got to
Yes.
be careful that we know exactly what is average when we use those terms well above average.
Yeah, you need to remember the context of the
context of
time
it, right.
in which that average is used.
So if Thanksgiving is looking well above average, that doesn't mean we're going to be in our shorts on Thanksgiving, but it could possibly mean that we're in the 50s when we should be 40s, for example.
Yes.
So that's good to follow that context of what average really is. And just for our listeners who might not know, where can you find a good list of what's average? I guess the National Weather Service site is good for that.
Yes, National Weather Service has a lot of data up there. Other websites, such as Weather Channel, I believe, has it. If
Yeah.
you want to kind of scrounge around.
I think AccuWeather, even on their 45-day
AccuWeather,
forecast, it shows what's
Weather
average.
Underground has
Weather
as
Underground,
well.
yeah.
Usually, if you just find your favorite weather outlet, if you click on archives or historical data or almanac, it'll tell you what the record high is, the average high, the record low, the average low, average precipitation.
Right.
So you get a whole slew of information from those websites.
A lot of good stuff. I'm looking at, as we're recording this, I'm looking outside, and one of my favorite tools to look at the wind is that flag over there by the military building over there. And when I see that thing flying pretty good from that direction, you can see we got a pretty good southwest wind starting to go out there. So that's ahead of our cold front.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And pay attention to that when it gets the frontal passage occurs. The flag should switch position.
And that's something we can put out to our listeners for anybody who might not be a geek enough to have a weather instrument like us or don't have the money. You can just use simple things like flags. I mean, I found even a cool website where it showed, you know, not all that scientific, but close enough where, you know, depending on what angle the flag is flying, roughly how many miles per hour the wind is. So the great little simple tools like that, we can get an idea.
Or other ways you could do it is even like the golfers use, and they have to pick up a little bit of grass, grow it. You could actually see the change if you pay attention, obviously, to that.
Right.
Or if you have like, not that I'm actually promoting this, but if you smoke, you could actually see how the smoke trail changes. Or if you have a fire, perhaps tonight, you'll see how the smoke actually moves.
Or we're not promoting smoking, just as somebody doesn't say, well, I picked up smoking because the two mics told me
yes,
to
we
go
are
in
not
to
promoting
forecast
that.
the weather. That would be very unique. See that on Facebook. Two weather guys promote smoking to check the weather with the wind speed. That's not what we're doing.
There are better, more healthier ways to check.
I like that one. That's really funny. But it works. I mean, if you are addicted to smoking, I guess you might as well get something out of it and at least see what the weather's doing while you're at it.
I suppose.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess, hey, we wound up filling a good 15 minutes right there. So just in summary, it was an unseasonably crazy warm week, but we're getting back to a little bit more back to normal, but still generally averaging on that slightly warmer than average side for the coming days. So.
It does look that way.
All right. We'll convene again next week. And I think next week we have a special guest. Is that still lined up?
Hopefully.
Maybe. We'll see. We'll just leave it at that. We might have a special guest next week, folks, so stay tuned for that. All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye.